Welcome to this short introduction to the University of Limerick Professional Diploma in Transferable Skills for the 21st Century Workplace. My name is Chris McInerney and I'm going to introduce you to some of the elements of this diploma. Before I do that, you might consider for a moment, in the job you do, or maybe in the job you would like to be doing, what kind of skills or competencies or attributes do you need to perform well? What skills do you need to do your job even better and to be recognised as such, because this is important that your performance is recognised. Clearly some of these are technical, some of them are job specific, some of them are role specific, some of them are associated with working in a particular sector. However, many of them are beyond the specific job role or sectoral role that you may fulfil. They're beyond the specific technical activity that you may be undertaking. Instead, much of what you need and what you will need are increasingly located in the world of what's called transferable or transversal skills. So in the short introduction, I'm going to introduce you to the world of transferable skills and explain why they are becoming so important. And I'll also introduce you to one of the main transferable skills, critical thinking. So briefly, what are transferable skills? So sometimes these are called transversal competencies. You'll see the different language being used. These are seen as the type of skills and abilities and attributes that are needed to enable people to address the increasingly complex and interrelated problems that confront societies and workplaces in the 21st century. So UNESCO, you may be familiar, is the UN Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. They have commented on transferable or transversal skills. And they say that academic performance is only as good or as meaningful as the complementary skills and competencies that learners develop. These complementary skills, they say, ultimately play a significant role in what helps learners to achieve success. And I would argue that the same can also be said of workplace performance. The idea of complementary skills to go along with your existing technical or role or job-specific skills are essential. More specifically, UNESCO divides transversal competencies into 5 core areas. All of these are connected and mutually reinforcing. These 5 core areas include critical and innovative thinking, interpersonal skills, intrapersonal skills. They include media and information literacy, and they include skills associated with global citizenship. Now, if we look at these in a bit more detail, things like critical and innovative thinking include things like creativity, entrepreneurship, broadly defined, resourcefulness, reflective thinking, but crucially reasoned decision making, and I'll be coming back to that in a little while. Interpersonal skills are seen to include communication skills, teamwork and collaboration skills, empathy and compassion in how people interact with each other. Intrapersonal skills, on the other hand, focus on skills associated with self-discipline, the ability to learn independently, the ability to be self-aware, the ability to persevere and to be self-motivating. And then finally, media and information literacy, as the name suggests, is clearly associated with being able to critically evaluate information and media content, and particularly to be able to obtain and analyse information through information and communication technology routes. These issues have also been looked at in particularly in terms of the needs of the workforce. And a particular project in Australia has tried to define and categorise 21st century workplace skills. And they identified 4 core areas. They identified skills in the areas of ways of thinking, ways of working, tools for working, and then ways of living in the world. So for example, ways of thinking again include things like creativity and innovation, critical thinking, problem solving and decision making. You see, this is a recurring theme. But it also includes capacity to learn how to learn. So knowledge about how we learn as a means of applying that in the workplace. They also talk about ways of working, and specifically in this area, focus on issues like communication and collaboration. They also look at tools for working. So in this category, they are looking at things like information literacy and ICT, similar to the types of themes that UNESCO developed. And then the broad theme of ways of living in the world emphasises citizenship, both local and global, how people integrate their life and their career, and how they merge personal and social responsibility, and how these responsibilities integrate with the workplace. The final example, I suppose, I'll give you is from the World Economic Forum, which in 2020 produced the Future of Jobs report. In this report, they identified 10 skills that they believe that the workplace of the future will need. So going backwards from 10 to 1, at 10, cognitive flexibility. Number 9, negotiation. Number 8, service orientation. Number 7, judgment and decision-making. You'll see that the decision-making concept comes back continually. Emotional intelligence, so the ability to be aware of how we interact with with others and what motivates us to do that. Coordinating with each other, including teamwork. Number 4, people management. And here we're talking about not just as a boss, but as a colleague, because we're all in our day-to-day work involved in people management of one form or another. But the top 3 skills that the World Economic Forum identify: creativity, number 3, number 2, critical thinking, and number 1, complex problem solving. And I'm going to come on to that in a little bit more detail. But one of the things you'll see, I suppose, that these are not the type of skills that your previous education and training may have addressed to date, but they are the type of competencies that you're increasingly expected to bring to the workplace. So let's take a closer look at one of these transferable skills, critical thinking. So if you were to take a step back for a minute and think about thinking, it seems like a strange thing to suggest you do, but there are different ways of thinking and how we think. So first of all, there is what is called random thinking, spontaneous thoughts. This is the kind of stuff we're all doing every day of the week, random thinking. Whether we share all of our random thinking is another matter, but we all engage in random thinking at different stages. The second type of thinking can be called ritual or habitual thinking. So this is thinking that we do which is a matter of habit, or as a matter of practice, or maybe as a matter of socialization. These are ways that we think that we may not even be aware that we think like that, because we're just so used to doing it out of habit. And the third type of thinking, I suppose, the thinking that's based out of an awareness that we like something or have an affinity with something. So this is sometimes called appreciative thinking. So we think in a particular way because we like one thing and we may not like another thing, or we like one person or we may not like another person. And then finally, I suppose, there is the area of critical thinking. So this is a different type of thinking that's based on objective analysis, on evaluation, all of which lead to a better capacity for judgment. So I would ask you to consider how you recognize yourself in each one of these. Which one of these is in charge in your world, if any of them is in charge in your world? How many of these do you practice? How many of these can you recognize? So critical thinking brings together a number of what are called universal intellectual values. It brings together values around clarity and accuracy and precision, things we need to bring to our thinking. There's a value around consistency. There's a value around relevance. There's a value around sound evidence, and this is a crucially important value, is that we base our thinking on evidence, not on habit, not on things we appreciate, not on random messages that we may pick up in the ether, but that we base it on sound evidence. Another value of good reasons and reasoning. So in our thinking, that it is informed by good reasons and good reasoning processes. There is depth to our thinking, but there is also breadth to our thinking. And crucially, and these values are developed by a US Foundation for Critical Thinking, they emphasize the importance of fairness in thinking. So critical thinking requires us to bring and apply an element of fairness. Crucially, critical thinking is self-guided. It doesn't require somebody to stand over you telling you to think like this. It is a self-disciplined way of thinking, which attempts to reason at the highest level of quality in a fair-minded way. So self-guided, self-disciplined, and reasoning at a high level of quality to produce fair-minded conclusions. So if I was to give you a number of tools, what does critical thinking involve? Firstly, it involves taking time to understand the problem or question at issue, something people don't always necessarily want to do, but time being spent understanding the problem or issue at question is essential. Secondly, being aware of the assumptions that guide our understanding. Again, these are assumptions that we need to interrogate ourselves to make sure we're aware of what those assumptions are. The third one is using concepts to frame understanding, and I'll give you an example of that in a second. But concepts or frameworks, I sometimes think this is like having a coat rack. Instead of throwing all your coats on the ground, you hang them on hooks on a coat rack, and it makes order and makes sense of your coats on the coat rack. This is really what we think about or talk about when we think about concepts. The fourth element is drawing on evidence. The fifth element is engaging in reasoning that leads to conclusions. So we're not just talking about critical thinking for the sake of it, or reasoning just for the sake of it. It needs to lead to conclusions. The next tool is based on the reasoning and the conclusions that we draw, is assessing implications and consequences of those conclusions, including assessing potential risks. So being aware that there are implications for any decisions or any conclusions that we arrive at is important. And then allied to that is being willing to look at potential objections from alternative viewpoints. So part of our reasoning process and our understanding of implications, consequences, and risk analysis is being able to look at alternative viewpoints. And then finally, and very importantly, is being conscious of the influence of frames of reference, some of which we're hardly even aware of. These are the kind of things that we associate with habitual thinking, things that influence our thinking that we need to be conscious of and need to be aware of. So in practice, if you were to consider how you might apply these tools, think about this as a task potentially in your workplace. Whether it's public sector or private sector doesn't really matter. These are issues that are relevant to both. So you're tasked as part of a team, you can imagine, in your workplace. So this is a specific workplace question or scenario. You have to develop a strategy. So you're not just about coming up with random ideas, you have to develop a strategy to advance gender equality at all levels of the organization. So sometimes when people are given that kind of a task, they might be tempted to jump straight in and say, yes, this is what we will do. But critical thinking requires you to take a step back from that and first of all, understand the problem. Understand, well, what do we mean? What is the nature of gender equality? What is the problem that we have to try to resolve here? Then go into looking at understanding assumptions, identify some supporting concepts. So for example, the concept of equality. What is it? Is it equality of opportunity you're talking about? Maybe it's equality of condition. Maybe it's equality of outcome. But you can use concepts to help you understand the task you have to deal with. You move then into assessing the evidence, both within your organization and outside the organization. You develop reasoned conclusions. You assess the implications and consequences. You look at the alternative viewpoints, and you also check this against not just your frame of reference, but you're doing this, remember, as part of a team. So you're having to merge and integrate multiple different frames of reference. So this is just an example of critical thinking being applied to a task that might be done in a different way if you didn't apply a critical thinking lens to it. So just to summarize, during the Professional Diploma on Transferable Skills for the 21st Century at the University of Limerick, what you will learn is how to make a link between critical thinking and problem solving. And you'll have seen that this is amongst the top skills identified, whether it's by UNESCO or the World Economic Forum or multiple other bodies. You will look and we will see how to apply this in the workplace and beyond. But on this diploma also, you will benefit from modules in ethical decision making and why it is so important in informing decision making in a rapidly changing world and workplace. We will also include a module on information and media literacy, designed not to serve you as a data specialist, but as a data consumer. And then finally, we will have a module on collaboration and leadership. Together, these will provide core 21st century skills that will help you succeed in the workplace and beyond. We're also more than happy for anybody to contact us for more information on the diploma, and hopefully we look forward to you joining us at the University of Limerick. Thank you.